Welcome back to Smart Start Radio. I am your co-host, Eming Piansay.
Eming. And I'm your co-host.
I've been saving that for a while.
Oh, that's so good. Wow. Okay. And I am your co-host, Smart Sara Robertson. How's that?
That's fitting.
All right.
Us are so excited to be back in the booth today. We have a really great episode. Like, I am excited. Like, if you can't tell, this is me excited. Sarah's more excited usually, but this is me excited.
I do get excited quite easily, yes. So, yeah, this conversation we've been waiting to have for a really long time. Jasmine and Tyra Dyson, you're going to be hearing from just a few minutes down the line. They're so phenomenal. They're phenomenal.
Yep, they're coming up. But before we start that, we have a little bit of our segment of breaking news. So it's really weird to like have like a not a heady or dark topic, but introspective at least. At the very least, introspective.
Yeah. So this is a piece of breaking news that came out recently that kind of sent the media into a tailspin, and I envision, the meetings and tourism industry as well. So it brings up a lot of questions, and since this conversation is, sort of about equity and what equity looks like, this piece of breaking news felt appropriate because we're sort of considering, what are the implications of what's happened. I feel like we're foreshadowing it too much. I think we should probably just dive into it.
Yeah, so the gist. Yes. Sarah's really good at the build-up without telling you what it is.
Well, I'm a writer.
I understand that. So what the breaking news being that Visit Florida seemingly removed their LGBTQ plus page from their website, which question mark? It's interesting. And so Sara had the privilege of speaking with who again?
So I spoke to Jack Johnson. Great name, but not the singer. This is another wonderful Jack Johnson over at Destinations International, and he is their chief of advocacy. So essentially, he sort of, his role involves, being a representative for destinations, making sure that they all have a voice. And so I spoke to him to get more insight on what are the implications of what has happened. Because what happened when Florida removed their LGBTQ plus resource page from their website, which a lot of destinations, CBBs, DMO websites will have this type of page that show, what are LGBTQ plus friendly establishments, activities, and so forth in their destination. So there are a lot of questions around, why this happened. Nobody knows exactly when it happened. A press release was never issued. And if you want to hear more about this at the time that this podcast is out there in your ears, there's a story on our website that I'm writing while we were recording this. Isn't that funny?
In real time.
Works?
Can you hear her keyboard clicking?
Well, okay, not right now, but
I know. Well, obviously.
I'm not good at multitasking.
You'll get there. I have faith.
Thanks, Eming.
But yeah, so we're going to send it over to Sara with Jack Johnson.
Absolutely. Okay. I think that is an interesting development that this has come up right after the conference in Tampa, because a really large focus of that conference was, Don Welsh got on stage and said, we are not, Destinations International is not in support of boycotting destinations. We know that destination boycotting has a negative economic impact on the local communities, and that was something that the conference really, really focused on. So that's something that I kind of want to dig into here. Do you anticipate seeing calls for boycotting in Florida, like statewide? And, do you Do you see any developments with CBBs in Florida trying to market their destinations as ones that are more welcoming in response or things like that?
Some of this is to be seen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just stepping back, my job is to look at these issues from all sides.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think you can look at it when you're looking at its totality. I think you can argue that what state of Florida has done in terms of removing the section on LGBTQ plus travel doesn't mean that they're not welcoming LGBTQ visitors. In fact, the governor has said on numerous occasions that everyone is welcome in Florida, and we are going to take him at his word and hold him at that word. I does think it means that Visit Florida has made a marketing decision, perhaps, to roll in LGBTQ outreach to the general public into their general campaign as opposed to a standalone. Now, whether that's a good decision or not, we will wait to see how it plays out. Um, but it's important that, and I believe, and I trust from the people that I have talked to in Florida, that Florida still intends on marketing itself, positioning itself as a place where everyone is welcome. That said, as a gay man, I can say that it's also understandable that the LGBTQ plus community, or many of us in the community, would feel this change is misguided or even worrisome. Um, I mean, let's face it, we have not always been welcomed everywhere. We are not welcomed everywhere. We are not always treated equally. We have been harassed, had our safety threatened in various places, and continue in various places across the globe. Um, the creating of these websites, sections of the websites, I think was a great way of a destination saying, we understand that, and we're reaching out to you and we're welcoming you, and we want you to know that you are as welcome here as anyone else, no more, no less.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's a good thing. Now, whether the Florida's new strategy works in terms of pushing out a greater inclusiveness or not, we'll continue to watch with great interest.
Mm-hmm.
We'll certainly see how this plays out. I know that many destinations in Florida are continuing to push that message out, continuing to have separate sections because they don't feel they're ready to go to that move. But the one thing we do know is, like as you said, is the idea of boycotting. And whenever something happens in Florida, it seems like the prospect of boycotts comes up again. Is a bad idea. It's counterproductive, and it's not just the financial impact that it has on the specific destination and the people in our industry, the travel and tourism industry, who are working there. But it's also fails to achieve anything. When anyone boycotts the Rancho into Florida, no one in Florida really knows that. They usually get replaced with other visitors. Um, During times of where I've seen great boycotts approached, I've also seen, as we have seen recently in Florida, record tourism numbers, record hotel collections. The thing to do, and this is what we tried to do with our conference in Tampa, was take a different approach, which is show up and get involved. Make a statement of what you believe in. And I think we did that, and you saw Don do
Mm-hmm.
that from the stage. Engage those communities who are saying they feel marginalized.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that too. We reached out to a lot of the communities within Tampa itself. We sent out as welcoming message as we can be.
Mm-hmm.
We were basically saying, Governor, you said we're welcome, so yeah, we're here.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean we're not going to be quiet. And I think that's the best approach.
Mm-hmm.
People make in destinations, it's really up to Floridians to make that impact, to change things. And what we can do is do what we can do to empower them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's showing up. That's so they can still have a job. That they can have the time to then turn to lobby their legislators and work with their political system. Boycotting rarely, if ever, achieves that type of goal when it comes to travel. Whereas empowering the people who are on the ground working for the change that you believe in, that actually can make a difference.
Wonderfully said. Thank you.
So that was really interesting, Sarah. Thank you so much for having that talk with them.
Yeah. Jack
I'm
was wonderful. Really, really smart guy, obviously, as you can hear. I think that he does a very good job of, avoiding drawing conclusions and instead looking at the situation with the facts that we have. Obviously, we want to draw implications, and it's our job, I think, as your media resource here in the meetings community to provide you with the facts that we have available and allow you to draw your own conclusions from that.
So based on your talk, because we didn't share with you the whole interview, but based on your talk with them, like, if you could gauge like the vibe of like, where is this heading? Like, is this just a Florida thing? Because obviously it's an election year, lots of stuff going on. Meetings is a space where we should feel inclusive, right? That's kind of the whole idea.
Completely.
And even though there was no statement released, no one said anything, like this implies a lot of things.
Yes.
And what do you feel like in your talk with him, did he talk about that at all? Did it ever come up?
Yeah. So one of the things that we talked about and that you can read about in the article on this news piece is that, we're in an age where boycotting destinations is sort of top of mind. And one of the main claims that Destinations International takes is that boycotting is not helpful. Rather than boycott destinations, we need to be holding meetings there, and those meetings need to be really intentional about engaging with the destination and starting difficult conversations. So I think one of the main lessons here is that, there is a ton of controversy happening right now. A couple of destinations in Florida, other CVBs have spoken out. Like Visit Lauderdale has spoken out to say that they disagree with the decision. And so essentially, there is some controversy happening among destinations, and there is what's the word? There's publicized disagreement about this issue. But essentially, this story will continue to develop as we move forward. Right. And I think, all we can do is to look at the facts that we have, look at the media that offers equitable and conscious intentional resources as we move forward, and make decisions based off of that, and keep having these conversations, but do so in a way that is respectful and that you are listening to listen. And that's what's going to help us build a kinder and more equitable world, I think.
I agree. But definitely stay tuned to Smart Meetings for updates on this story, because I feel like this is definitely going to evolve.
Oh, yeah.
Within the next couple months, probably.
Maybe within the next couple of weeks, maybe days.
Maybe.
Maybe. That's how these things work. So stay up to date.
Well, that's it for breaking news for this episode. We're going to throw it over to ourselves, to Tyra and Jasmine Dyson. Enjoy.
Welcome, everyone, to Smart Start Radio. We are so happy you've joined us once again for this wonderful episode that we are bringing in Tyra Dyson and Jasmine Dyson, a fantastic mother-daughter duo here in the meetings and events industry. Tyra and Jasmine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we've heard so much about you. We've heard a lot about you both from our boss, JT. She talks so much about you. She said, you're so excited. You're so vibrant. You're so you have so many thoughts. And we're like, we have to get these girls in a room with us to talk about some issues, because we know you have a lot to say. So just to kind of start things off, can we hear just a little bit about you guys and your history and where you come from and what you do and all that jazz?
As you said, you know who we are. I'm Tyra Dyson. I am a Washington, D.C. native, born and actually raised in Washington, D.C., although Alexandria, Virginia is my permanent residence right now. I have been in the meetings and events industry for a little over 23 years, but I started my career in the association world, the world that we kind of know, JT and all of the other awesome people in the hospitality industry, in the hospitality world. And that for me was started over 20 years ago. And since then, I've worked basically in every genre you can probably think of, from association to corporate to also doing government meetings as well. So I've been around for a very long time. I've worked in, like I said, almost every genre of this side of the industry, including also co-owning two other businesses with my daughter who's on here with me today. And for that, I do pretty much some of the same things with directing all of the events for all of her branding and marketing clients and all of our women empowerment events.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
And Jasmine, could you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So I was grandfathered into the industry because my mom has been in the industry for over 20 years. But specifically for me, I work with small to mid-sized businesses, associations, and corporations centered around marketing. So my kind of wheel of influence is how to create more engaging experiences, how to get marketing that's more exciting, that kind of drives registrations and results to get people out to your events, and then how to nurture those relationships over time so that people want to come back year after year. So over about 10 years ago, I started to study and specialize in marketing, specifically around branding and brand building. And now I've kind of morphed that into digital marketing and all the things that kind of encompass what marketing is today, which looks very different from the marketing that I studied in college. But it's exciting nonetheless because I get to keep on my toes and learn new things and kind of try out new trends constantly. So innovation and strategy is kind of where I that's kind of my spark and where I really thrive. And so that's kind of a little bit about my background and what it is that I do.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
And the two of you own and operate a business together. Is that correct?
Too.
Yes. So the Brand Xperience Lounge is a strategic marketing agency. That's my baby. And so that's the organization that we work with together. I do a lot of the marketing, branding, all of that stuff. And then she comes in and helps us with our event management and execution.
Wonderful.
Wow.
So essentially, Jasmine's being a little modest. So in that, she helps. She said to small to mid-sized businesses. So basically, she helps people start to build it. So we like to say we help you build it, brand it. Then I come in with the launch part. So she helps you actually build a business from the ground up. Then she helps you, gives you all the digital marketing to basically position yourself as a business. And I help you launch that business with an event, introducing your business to your marketplace.
Wow.
So that's
Oh
how
my
that
gosh.
works.
So when I was introducing you two, I paused for a minute looking for the right word to describe what this mother-daughter duo is, and the word wasn't coming to me, but it just came to me. So I'm gonna just say Smart Start Radio is happy to host this trailblazing mother-daughter duo. You guys are awesome. This is amazing work you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank
How did
you.
this happen? Like, what made you guys decide, like, hey, we need to do this together?
Jasmine, of course, she's my only child. So we have always been very, very close. I have always had an entrepreneur heart. So I've always had a lot of like they call side hustles, if you will. And so when she was in college, even she had joined joined a business with me. And then at that point, I think I was doing like one of the MLN selling jewelry or something like that. And I wanted her to also have her own income while she was in college. And so basically she, of course, like she said, got into the branding, got into the marketing, and we were learning a little bit more and more about businesses.
Right.
And then we were like, well, we should be able to do this kind of like on our own, because the problem that we found was, as a small business, is that you really needed the branding and the marketing piece, but we weren't a Fortune 500 company to be able to afford the level of marketing and branding that you needed to be able to get your voice and your face out there in the marketplace. So Jasmine is just excellent she's all self-taught, by the way. With all of her technology, which is freaking amazing. And so when we started, we were like, we want to have this, we want other people to be able to have Fortune 500 level marketing without the Fortune 500 level price tag, right? Because you haven't gotten it yet. But to get there, you still needed that level of marketing. And so that's kind of how the baby started. And we were like, we can do this on our own and then show other people what we did, because she was so good at graphic design and all of these things. And so we were like, well, we can help other smaller businesses and people just starting out, especially like we call solopreneurs. If you're just one individual and then don't have any staff, but really trying to get out there, we can kind of help you do that, because that was always the pain point for us. We were a lot of business conferences we would go to, listen to people talk about business, and we would be so excited, and they get to the end and be like, and it's just $20,000 to get us there.
Aw, that's a hefty price tag.
Exactly. And then all that excitement would just go,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so we thought that was just, kind of unfortunate. We get it, but we wanted to just be able to help people out, because that was a pain point for us. So that's kind of how we started the Brand Experience Lounge, because we started out as, it actually used to be called P2P, which was Empowered to Prosper. It's kind of what that standed for. And then we rebranded to the Brand Experience Lounge as we grew in the industry, and then we started our women's empowerment, I think back in 2017 or 2018, to focus on uplifting women in business. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Nice.
So when you talk about uplifting women and women in business, one of the things I was thinking about when you're talking about this, like facing this hefty price tag and like all your hopes are dashed, and with your business, you're sort of making it more accessible, so accessibility kind of comes to mind, and then you bring in women empowerment. So I don't know, I guess I'm kind of thinking about how like not everyone would do that. Not everyone would care, but you guys do.
Yeah, I think for me, starting a business, I'm naturally a creative, so a lot of this stuff is just exciting to me. So to be honest, it kind of just came from a place of like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And you get to see these things come together. One of the things I always say when people ask me what I do is like, I take the ideas out of your head onto paper and into the marketplace, because that's kind of really the thing that excites me, is like someone coming to me with their big idea. And if you've ever worked with people who are like starting something new or excited about something new, like that excitement is infectious, right? So to her point, to be so excited and so hopeful and so motivated in these spaces, and then they hit you with something that kind of puts the pin in the balloon, that part kind of sucks. So for me, starting out, a lot of the excitement came from helping people to see the idea all the way through to fruition. And so whether or not they're still in business now today or not, just to go with them, be able to take them through the entire process of launching the idea into the marketplace and seeing that this thing is actually possible was always like the cool part for me. Yeah. So when we started out, first of all, it came from our own experience, like she said, of building a business and trying to figure out, because naturally anyone who knows us, like we have very, very high taste and we have a very excellent, way of seeing things and doing things. So no, every business owner out there who's just starting out is not expecting to have Fortune 500 level marketing, but that's just who we are as people. So we didn't want to have to cut corners. We didn't want to have to go through the janky process of, the horrible business cards and the horrible stuff before we got to the big thing. Like, we wanted to launch out into the marketplace with a brand that was representative of who we were as people. And so that's how we even kind of landed on branding, because at first it was just kind of like all different facets of marketing. Like, how do we do our own marketing and make it look so good that it, adequately represents us? And then as I started to like go back into my toolkit from school and some of the marketing and business classes I had, I'm like, wait, branding is what it is, and that's what we do. And so for us, it was about giving people that same level of experience. I am a nerd, so once I decided on the thing, I just kind of geeked out on it and learned everything there was to know about the industry, about how you do this stuff. I built my own websites. I learned how to code. I learned how to do all the things. And so I was able to study enough and learn enough to be able to make sure that our brand and our presentation was up to par and up to the level that we wanted. And so then I decided, okay, well, if I can do this for us, I'm pretty sure that I can help some other folks out too. And along the way of my journey of learning, I had some, my old entrepreneurship teacher from high school was like, well, hey, can you do something for me? Some other folks my boss had a friend who was starting a business and said, hey, can you help help her out. So it just kind of along the way, I picked up people who allowed me to kind of practice of sorts to kind of refine this thing into what it has become. But that was kind of the foundation of it, is that, you know, I wanted to launch something out into the world that was representative of who I was. And I couldn't afford to pay someone to do that for me. So I had to figure it out how to do it myself. And then I was able to help other people do the same.
That's incredible.
Wow, you guys are full on just like all engines go. Like, that's really amazing. Like, that was inspiring to hear that, honestly.
It really is. Like, if I can't pay somebody to do it, I'll just figure out how to do it myself. And you did.
Yeah, she's good at that. I always tell everybody you should always have a millennial on your side. It has definitely helped me for sure.
So one big reason why we want to talk to you guys was one question we've been talking about, at least in our office, is that, you know, our industry has a lot of females in it. Like, it's very female dominated. But the issue being is that a lot of the time we're not up on the top, like, C-suite level. And so we're just kind of like wondering, like, why do you think that is? And what can be done to, like, you know, shake that up? How can we be more empowered to take leadership roles in an industry that, even though there's so many of us, it's not really, like, always an option?
Yeah, like in this industry far and wide, there's so many women. It's women dominated, but in the C-suite, this industry's C-suite is male dominated.
True. And I think that we all kind of know the answer to that. This is something that's been an old adage for centuries, unfortunately. And I think because the world in and of itself is male dominated, though. And I think that's first and foremost, the main reason why. And honestly, why I think we can say our industry is dominated by women, to be perfectly honest. I think if you think in the grand scheme of things, if you think association executives, hospitality executives, all of those people, and in sales, even more particularly, those are all male dominated fields in our industry. So I honestly don't really think that it is dominated by women. It's dominated by women as meeting planners. From a meeting planner perspective, but when you talk about hospitality sales and hotel sales, CVB sales, that's tech side, you know, the AV providers, those are all male dominated, right? And then when you get to the association executives too, a lot of times those CEOs of these associations are male. Even the very few African American CEOs of associations that I do know are male. So I think that, you know, it's the old adage again. I think because the world in and of itself is male dominated, and I think unfortunately it still is a bad stigma, and then like women, like we just can't hack it, right? Or we just don't know all that we need to know to be able to be successful in this particular field. And I think men being men, unfortunately, a lot of men don't want to work for women. So how does that happen, right? At the C-suite level, because those men would have to then answer to a woman. And so I think even what we're looking at, you know, in our political purview, I think that has been the same thing, whether it's with Kamala Harris or even Hillary Clinton. I think the world is still not ready for a woman CEO, if you will, if that makes sense. And I think that is part for the course when we are trying to reach and climb. And absolutely hats off to the women who have made so many strides. There are a lot of women in C-suite positions, just not enough, right? Or a lot of the women who are qualified to be there aren't there. And I think the main reason still is because it's very hard for men to answer to women. And I think they can tend to keep using the excuse is that somehow we're just too emotional or just too fragile. So when the going gets tough, we won't be able to hack it. And so they hesitate. We could be a number 2, but it's very difficult to make us a number 1. And that's unfortunate. Jasmine, if you have any thoughts, but that's just my thought.
I think two things. I think, first of all, when we have conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think that a lot of times people operate in groups of silo, which dilutes the entire conversation. And so if we aren't intentional about diversity conversations when it comes to Black folks, or when it comes to individuals with disabilities, or when it comes to groups, other social groups, then if we allow those groups to be ousted in their, particular silos, then the larger conversation of diversity, equity, inclusion gets lost and diluted. And I think that is one of the issues that not a lot of people are addressing, because if we don't aren't intentional about diversity, equity, inclusion when it comes to Black folks, then that also trickles down to our reasoning for not allowing women at large to be in the positions that they deserve to be in. And we're not as intentional about that as well. And so I think that in all facets of diversity, we're lacking. And because every group is kind of fighting their own battle, it doesn't allow for us all to take down the big monster, which is men. So, I mean, women are qualified. When women do get into positions of power, a lot of times, like it happens with other social groups as well, they're fearful of being able to keep that role or being able to hack it, like she said. And so they don't allow themselves to be a vessel, a door, a gateway, a pathway for the next woman to come in behind them to be able to take up more space in those environments. They kind of settle with being the only woman and the only representative for the hundreds or thousands of women behind them, but you're the only voice still, so that doesn't contribute to the larger conversation and the larger issue. And so I think that, women being very intentional about supporting women, not just of their particular group or ism, as they like to say, but all women of all different groups, and being intentional about that, I think, and standing on, 10 toes down on the fact that they want to see other women rise to those same levels and other women have those same opportunities, and being as intentional as men are in that regard. Because let's just be honest, men are going to hire who they want to hire, and it's going to be their friend, their college buddy, or their college buddy's son. Like, they're going to be intentional about making sure that they look out for other men. And women and other groups who are traditionally marginalized don't take that same approach. I understand it's mostly out of fear, but if we don't take that same approach, then we'll continue to go down this rabbit hole of doing the most work and receiving the least reward. And so that's kind of where we are right now.
I think that's so true. One of the things that that spoke volumes is I think it was convening leaders, a conversation that they had with their CEOs. And one of the questions was asked to one of the female leaders that was entrepreneurs who was actually on that panel. And they asked her where her support came from. Mostly, was it women and men? And the majority of the women raised their hands to say, well, she said a man. And everybody seemed so shocked. And then the guy, the moderator was so shocked, and it was like, and then they asked the question to everybody: how many of you feel that you're not supported by women that are many of your biggest supporters or kind of helped you get up the ladder? And 90% of the women, self-included, raised our hands. And it's for the reason, unfortunately, that Jasmine said, while we say that men definitely would support men, see, the thing is, because men aren't threatened by women, right? That's the first thing. And so they're willing to help you because they're not threatened by you. They're not worried about you taking their position, if you will. And so the opposite is true for women, though. Women, because it's so scarcity for us to get to these positions, and because we fought so hard to get there, we're so afraid of someone taking our position or looking better than us, so that we don't support them, or only to us, or the ones that we have, our subordinates. We don't train them to rise to where we are so then we can move higher. We just rather stay here because we finally made it, and we don't want to open up the door to allow for others. So therefore we don't pull up, right? And we can only be the one. And so then you only got the one. But if our mentality changes and say, well, I can't go forward if I don't pull somebody to replace me. I want another woman here so I can move up into the next position that there aren't many women, and we keep that ball rolling, and then it will become the norm to see women in executive level and CEO positions. But we are so threatened because it can only be one, and I finally made it, and I don't want nobody to take my place.
Yeah.
Then you just got the one, and then it's not the norm. If it became the norm to see women in these roles, wouldn't be an issue. Fine, I know women can do it. A man wouldn't hesitate to hire a woman, or boards, right? A lot of times these things are governed by boards. When you get to a certain level, they wouldn't have the insecurity about hiring a woman at the top because they know that she can do it. The problem is they don't see enough of us in the positions and don't think that we could successfully succeed. And so therefore it doesn't happen. But to Jasmine's point, the women have to be secure enough in their position. If you know you are great, you got to go for it. And you have to be okay with training other women and pulling other women up in your position so that you can continue to move up. And then it just becomes a norm. The best person gets the job, period.
Right.
I think that, oh, sorry, Eming.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that you make a really important point when you bring up like competition between women. I think that competition between women exists far and wide. It exists in grade school. It exists in the workplace, you know, and it just sets all of us back. But I'm wondering if you could speak more about, you know, what does a healthy women-centered like mentorship relationship look like?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the things, and I might have been in smart meetings actually. One of the magazines, I don't know.
Could be.
But one of the
Very
things I
possible.
think
Could be woman.
a great leader is to basically train other leaders, hands down. You have to be a great leader. I am training you to not only just be able to step into my feet and lead, but to also be even better than me, right? So I'm trying to put you in position to be where I am because, again, I want to move. And I think we just don't do that. I personally have been in the positions where I'm on a need to know basis. The information sharing is not there to give people the education and the knowledge that they need to learn about the job or the thing. And I think because we just don't do that, we should be training other leaders, train other leaders. And to me, a leader is not by title, right? So I don't need to be a CEO to be a great leader, right? I don't need to be that person. I just need to be able to give you the information that you need that's going to help you to succeed, period. And whether that's getting to where I am or exceeding where I am, it's fine. Because again, you and the goal is to make sure I tell you to pay it forward, right? So you do the same thing. Whenever you got good information, whenever you're trying to navigate and help people navigate our industry, which is far and wide and can be intimidating if you're new to it, train them, show them, share information. Doesn't matter whether they're doing that particular job or not. Share the information, give them the knowledge, and help them. And I think that is really the main thing. We have to train people and be okay with it, with training other people to be leaders. Leaders train other leaders, and that's you want to do that. And I think that is the thing that we really need. If we get there, I mean, forget about it. Forget about it, because everybody will not be just such in a cocoon that they just don't know. Open, share the information. It's okay. Nobody can steal your position from you. You are who you are, right? And if you are who you say you are, nobody will ever be honestly able to really, truly take your position.
Yeah.
I think for me, a great mentorship relationship involves just as a mentor being a door opener. So introducing the person that you're mentoring into spaces, into environments that they may have not been exposed to before. Because one thing that I know and throughout my journey of life in general is that exposure is everything. So a lot of times mentorship is kind of like this, you know, raising a child conversation where you're molding this person and who you want them to be or into you a lot of times, versus just being a door opener, opening the door, introducing them into the room, having them, you know, placing them in certain environments, introducing them to the right folks, getting them access to the right resources and information so that they can take all of those things for themselves and build the life, the career, the business, whatever that they desire. And I think that is what the hallmark of good mentorship is, because a lot of times those relationships kind of get convoluted when you don't get the position or the person doesn't come work for your company or, you know, so on and so forth. It becomes a little too personal versus as a mentor, me just being a door opener. If I expose you, like she said, the events and hospitality industry is so vast. So if I'm mentoring someone who's an emerging professional in the industry, it is my job just to open the doors, open all the doors to the right people, to the right places, to the right information, to the right conversations, and allowing them to take all of that stuff in, and then helping them to facilitate a plan for their life and their career that makes sense for them. And not necessarily doing it for them or giving them all the answers, but just being a resource so that they can kind of build their own relationships, build their own resource, diaries, get their own knowledge and tools and figure things out for themselves. Because to her point, as a leader, it is your job to build other leaders, but leaders need a level of autonomy as well. So you have to be able to make your own decisions. You have to be able to know your own things. And you can't be so heavily reliant on another person in order to get the job done. And so for me, the hallmark of good mentorship is just opening the doors, giving you the right resources and information so that you can, take what you will. I like to say, eat the meat, spit out the bones, right? Take all the things you need to develop the plan and the strategy that works for you, and then helping you fine tune it along the way. It's an ever evolving relationship. And even once or if we get to the point where we need to bring in some other folks because, I can no longer serve you, being, knowledgeable enough and humble enough to say, well, maybe I should pass you off to this person, or maybe I should pass you off here to that person or in that direction so that you can get what you need.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I would say even right now, I've always been kind of the mama bear, especially to a lot of the millennials in our industry. And maybe I had an affinity for it because I had one, but and I watch them today being very successful. I see people who were salespeople in hotels when I was visiting a hotel in other cities who are now on a different side. And because I walked in and was like, hey, do you know about PCMA? Hey, do you have access to this? If someone told you about this organization, do this on your own, even if they won't pay for it, because I'm also a believer that you cannot expect somebody else to pay for your education and for your knowledge. If you believe it enough that in yourself that you need this, make the investment in yourself if you're really trying to get to that next level. But I watch where they are today, and I'm so very proud of them, because these are all people that I just said, gave them information, introduced them. Hey, do you know such and such? Brought them into the room, no matter what their position was, and made them feel like they belonged, right? And I think that's the other thing. It's the sense of belonging. And sometimes people feel like, oh, you're this title and I'm this, and no, I'm not no better than you. Titles don't make you. Right.
No,
and so
don't.
at the end of the day, if you make people feel like they belong, then they get comfortable. And if they feel comfortable, then they will want to proceed, that they'll ask questions. They'll get the extra knowledge. Then they won't be afraid to soar and move forward. But I think it's when we act like you're not ready for this, or you haven't been paid your dues, which is a thing that I really hate to hear. That kind of thing, then you make them fearful of really trying to pursue something that they may really want to do, or thinking they're not ready yet. Well, make them ready. Give them the information, bring them into the room, give them a seat at your table, let them hear, let them share. And like she said, then they can take that knowledge to become their own individual and figure out what their success or their career path is. But it's opening the doors, it's sharing the information, it's doing that. Because I know for me, when I started, I had one person do that for me, and I understood how powerful that was. And then I continued to do it for other people because I know how I felt when first coming into the industry. And so I make it a point to make sure that I do that for all the emerging leaders, which is the reason why I'm still on that committee today. Actually, I was on that inaugural committee and still serve on that committee today when it first started in 2005.
Wow, that's really
It was
cool.
called Emerging Leaders for PCMA when it first started. Some emerging.
Yeah. Oh my
Now,
gosh.
yep, 2005 was the first year, but I've always served on it because I believe in that next generation, that future. We need them because that's how we continue to grow and stay innovative. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that, in your opinion, like how we can become a more like, I don't want to say feared, but just a more just a group that's taken more seriously in terms of like
powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. The one thing that I have learned for sure is at the end of the day, It's kind of the old adage. It's not, they say, it's not what you know, kind of who you know. That part is true. But I think more importantly, and then put it in layman's terms and what they say today, the person who have influence is king. So it doesn't matter whether you are the CEO or you're a big executive or whatever. If you don't have influence, you have nothing, because that means you don't have the ear of the people who matter. If that makes sense, right? That means you don't have the relationships. And so I have been able to get a lot more done than a lot of executives that, hold really big titles. And that's because of my relationships and because of my influence, right?
How do you like form those relationships though? How do you build that influence?
Authentically being who you are. And I think it's contagious, right? One thing about me and people who met me 20 something years ago in this industry to today, Tyra Dyson hasn't changed. Right. And I'm saying from a baseline of the person that I am, always wanting to help people, always being there. If I say I'm going to do something or be somewhere, I'm there. If you invite me to something, I'm coming. And yes, it was tireless. It's nice sometimes. I didn't feel like it, but if I say I'm going to be there. But one thing in one of the businesses that I talked about earlier, we always said you had to show up to blow up, right? And so you never know the conversation is going to happen when you're in that room. And then so many times I was like, dang, I was glad I came, because I made a connection that I might have never been able to make if I didn't go, right? I got to meet the person that I was looking to meet to help me in another thing, right? Or I was there to help that they were looking for. So I think, showing up, being authentically who you are, but being a genuine person, people can see that. People can see that about you. And I think that's how I build relationships. I talk to people. It's something that people have to get comfortable doing. Jasmine is naturally an introvert. I will give it to her. She's gotten a lot better. And I think too, because she, in the world of like the influencer days, we understand the power of that. But I definitely learned the power of networking, because everything that you do in life is relationship based. Again, like she said, people are going to give the business to their friend, to the people that they know, to the people that they feel most comfortable with. And so you have to be in the spaces of making people so that you're top of mind when someone thinks about something like, oh my gosh, you know what? This conversation, but you need to reach out to Eming. She was great. She does this. She's a good person to talk to. Oh, I know someone like that. Sarah's awesome. Call her over at Smart Meetings. They do podcasts. If you're trying to get a podcast off these are how these conversations happen. And when you speak someone's name when they're not in the room and provide a recommendation, you would remember that, right? You would remember that if someone called and said, hey, I was looking for this, Tyra Dyson recommended you. When I say influence, if I say it, most people are like, okay, you stamped it, it's golden, it's good, let me call and hire that person. And that's how we can continue to build and share and give each other the platforms, right, that we need to get to and stay successful. It's the sharing of not being afraid of someone doing better. We have one of our signature talks is collaboration over competition, because there's no need for competition. And if you always say yourself, you will never, ever be in competition.
I would say for professionals in any industries, because I have to do it naturally because I own a business and that's just a part of what it is. Right. But I think a lot of times people who work for like larger organizations or even small ones, professionals who, work for companies every day, your identity kind of falls under the umbrella of the organization versus you sharing your subject matter expertise from as Sara or as Eming. And I think that's how you build intentional relationships is, being intentional and authentic about sharing your space, whatever it is that your thing is. I call it your secret sauce, right? Whatever it is that you specialize in, whatever it is that you geek out on, whatever it is that you could be a resource to some other person for or about. Being intentional about sharing that knowledge, sharing that information, sharing those resources with people, and then asking them for connections in other areas, right? Hey, I am a producer for podcasts. If anybody is looking for, information, want to start a podcast, let's have a quick coffee chat. Like, that's something easy. It'll be a 15-minute conversation that you can have on the phone with somebody, but they may come, and you can say in the same conversation, I'm looking for a resource in this. And so you guys come to the table sharing intentional resources and swapping connections that you both can use. And then that's how you continue on. A lot of times, folks who work in certain, environments and organizations, you wait for the big industry conference that comes at the end of the year. You wait for the big networking event that everyone goes to. And that's your one and only chance to build intentional connections with folks. Where right now we all have the internet. So anyone can get on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, this is my thing. I'm looking for someone who specializes in this. If you're that person, let's connect. I want to build, a connection with you. And so that's a way to kind of start to build those relationships without having to be, like she said, the extrovert that goes to any and every event that people invite her to. Now, it works. It absolutely works, because her being present and being visible has, been a huge part of her success in her career. But I think the most important thing about it is being intentional. So her intentionally showing up for everyone every time she's invited somewhere has garnered her a certain level of results. So the same could be applied in other facets as well.
Yeah. As someone who has called myself an introvert my entire life, and only in recent years have I sort of learned to emerge from my shell.
I really don't believe that, but sure.
I've gotten better. But like Jasmine, you've had to work for it to just be a little bit more outgoing. But I was, oh my gosh, so shy when I was a kid. I had such a hard time talking to people and making friends. Anyway, all of that being said, I do think that, introverts, it can kind of be a superpower too, because as much as Tyra can go out to these events and make these connections, you prove your reliability by doing so. And Jasmine, I think that being in more on the introverted end of the social spectrum here, it's you can really, really nail those deep personal connections and prove yourself to be trusted and honest and authentic, and it's earned.
Yeah. I think just being who you say
I
you
agree with that.
doing the thing, right? If that's who you say you are, then just be that person. But I do think you do have to have a certain level of sharing. And I think that's the thing that Jasmine has definitely gotten better at, is that she is so super dope. But I don't think that she shares it enough, especially being a business owner. And unfortunately, we do know, it's unfortunately it's almost in this world that we currently live in the social media age, you kind of have to show it, right? And at the end of the day, people are taking it for real or for whatever it is. But if you don't present it and show that, because people who are not even as talented as she has had are millionaires and multimillionaires, because some of them are her clients.
Right.
But because they aren't afraid to just put it out there and say, I can do this thing and whatever. And people immediately, that person is coming to their mind, because just like the commercials that we naturally see, we know the jingle just because we hear it enough, right? Or we see colors enough, and you equate that to a thing. And so I don't think, you still do have to share, whether that's on social media. Hey, I did it. Listen, it is okay to celebrate your small wins. It's okay to celebrate yourself. And I think, talking about women, that's another thing that women do not do a good job at. We are so afraid to share our wins or our accomplishments if we did something, no matter how small, because we are so worried about what others are going to think. I'm going to look too cocky, or I'm going to look, like I'm arrogant, or someone going to say, oh, I'm not being humble enough. Another word. Celebrate. Listen, men do not hesitate. Okay.
No.
Men will have way less experience and for all of that stuff, and still say, I'm the man and pay me all of this, and I've never done anything in my life, but I still think I deserve that money. And guess what? 9 times out of 10 they get it, because they went in there saying, this is what I want, and they don't care what's on paper. But a woman, we will be qualified for 19 out of the 20 responsibilities that job is asking for, and because we don't have the one, we won't apply.
Right.
I think
they will come in with 50% don't care, and then tell you what they want to be paid and get it. Or we'll start to negotiate. And I think that's what women do. We start to negotiate with ourselves. We negotiate ourselves down is what happens. Share those small wins. I don't care. Here's the thing that I really love right now. I see on LinkedIn. Now, every time somebody, forget an award, when they get a certificate, they're like, just got this new certificate. And I love that for us because we would never have done that before. But
Right.
because other people started doing it, what happens? It makes other people more comfortable about doing
Yeah.
and sharing their
Right.
accomplishments, no matter how small, because it's the small wins that lead you up to like the big thing, right?
Totally.
And so it's okay to share. Share
Yeah.
what you do. Talk, oh, people, I don't share. I don't share that. That's personal. Well, you listen. The one thing that we found out during the pandemic, Jasmine and I had trained so many people, and we kept telling people that got these side jobs because their job wasn't paying enough, and these women were trying to make the ends meet, and they were excellent at these other things, and they kept saying, and we kept saying, okay, now shit, oh no, I got to keep that separate. Why? But when
Right.
the pandemic hit and you lost your job and you didn't know where your next meal was coming from because you did this thing for 20 something years, and
Right.
you always was a great, excellent cooker or baker, or you made things that you just kind of sold at your kids' bake sale that was very. Now, all of a sudden, everybody in the world started the businesses of the thing that they were already doing that we told them to share. And now they're like, they don't care. They share everything. But we tried to tell you, share that because then people can buy into that because I've seen you talk about that before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you can do that for me. I know you can because I remember you saying that. I've seen.
Yeah.
So I think we've gotten a lot better at sharing, but I think we still need to do more. Celebrate. It doesn't matter, but and stop worrying about what people think.
Yeah. I
You
think
know,
what's really
stop
important
worrying
too
about that.
with like, sharing and like feeling comfortable sharing is like having those strong female relationships, having those like women supporting women,
Yep.
like when somebody shares, champion them.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And that's all people are, like I said, we all listen. We don't do things for someone to pat us on the back, but it's nice when we know we do deserve it, right? When they do give us that. And I think that's the thing, because it's the confidence that you need to keep going, to keep doing the thing. And sometimes when you put something out there and it's crickets, you don't hear anything back, then we crawl back up into a shell. And like you said, let's champion the women when they are making strides, when they are accomplishing things, because we don't know how hard it was for them to accomplish that thing that looks so small to us but might have been a big thing to them. So you got to give them that. You give them their flowers right now and tell them, you go girl, you keep going, and if I can help you with anything, let me know. How can I help? How can I help you continue on that journey of being the person that you want to be? That's it.
So on your personal um life roads that you've both been on, what has been the advice that you've gotten from whenever, when you were younger, when you're older, whichever, that was the best thing that like really made you feel seen and just made you feel like I know what I need to do with this information?
I think for me, it wasn't anyone. Sorry.
Ringtone. That's a good ringtone.
I think no one was actually, I think for me, two things. My mom was a very, very confident woman. She didn't have a lot growing up, had a very light education growing up as well. But the one thing she was is she was very confident in who she was, and never apologized for it. And my mother may have had $25, if anything, in her pocket, but she always looked like $1,000. And when she was the epitome of, she didn't look like what she had been through in her life. And I think watching her, for me, gave me the confidence to be okay in the space. They gave me the confidence to walk into a room. And still to this day, a lot of times, especially if I go on FAMs or familiarization tours, even at conferences, African American women, we are still the minority in this world, in our industries, and especially when you start talking about C-suites. So often I am the only African American on a trip, on a thing. You know what I mean? And so, first of all, she gave me that confidence to be okay and never be ashamed of who I am and where I came from, no matter my educational background or whatever. And she gave me that, and I think she gave me that confidence. So when I was working in spaces and being treated than less than, or other Black women wasn't giving me an opportunity, or white women wouldn't give me an opportunity, or men, whomever that was, it's a very lonely feeling. And I think I had to remember who I was and that I was deserving. And so I started to just be who I was, right, and knew that I deserved to be there and kept striving for it versus letting me let it set me back. And then when I worked with other women who were around me who felt like they weren't worthy, I encouraged them. And I think that was the main thing. I think you encourage other people to the level of confidence that you, even if you don't have it, encourage somebody else. And so maybe watching them succeed will then give you the confidence to go ahead and do it. Because a lot of times we can do for others what we can't do for ourselves, right?
Right.
And so I think for me, having gone through that and not having people in our industry, revere me or give me make me feel confident like I deserve to be in a certain position made me want to go more, right? Want to go harder. And I knew I was deserving. So I kept pushing, I kept showing up, I kept entering the spaces, I kept going for the thing. And then I kept encouraging other women to do the exact same thing as me, and men too. I mean, it's funny. I got a email maybe about 2 weeks ago from one of my old coworkers, Dimitri, and he was just saying, just watching me and what I'm doing. And that's why I say sharing is important. And what I'm doing has given him so much confidence that he thanked me even for the nuggets that I gave him and mentoring him when we work together, because I do that everywhere I go. But watching my journey and just watching the things that I'm doing inspires them. And people, Jasmine inspired me, other millennials inspire me to keep going, because again, I'm a person I'm over 50 years old. And yes, we felt the ageism, I have to say it, in our industry, and being pushed aside, or we don't know, and we need to go. Not being looked at, now is that we can still go. And I'm like, no, but they inspired me to keep going, and people my age and even older inspire me to keep going, and that's why the sharing part is so important, because they're inspiring me. I'm like, you go, girl. Now, if the industry was as wide open when I was their age, I probably would be even further, but I think I'm always where I'm supposed to be and doing the thing that I'm supposed to do. So it's good, because maybe it was to help you guys get the confidence, so it was easier for you coming in. And I think that for me is the thing. So I learned by being in, and when the person took the time, and I have to give him a shout out, Victor Robinson. He left the industry not long after I got in, but he had already been in for 20 years. But the first thing that he did was, he was very well known. And it's like, if people walked up to talk to him, if we were standing together, and Victor, he was like, he would pause and say, do you know Tyra? That made me feel like I belonged. Like, don't discard this person because hey, do you know Tyra? Tyra, and then we would introduce, and I to this day do that for everybody. So that is one of the great things that helped me, and I made sure that I reciprocated that with other people, because it's hard, like you said, when you don't know people, and people sometimes can discard you, like you're not important enough to even be introduced. And so just that one small thing give you the confidence to make you feel like, okay, I belong in this, and thank you for that. And I know what that meant for me, and then I continue to do the same thing.
It really makes all the difference to like lift each other up.
Yeah. Nobody is too small.
I would say for me, similarly, because we are related. So I too grew up with a high level of confidence. I've always forever believed that I could do anything. And I think that level of belief, thank God, has carried me throughout my entire life. Like, I
told you that.
Really believe, I really have a massive belief in myself. And I think that a lot of the things that I've been able to accomplish is because I don't believe that it's not possible. And so it's kind of like a childlike ignorance almost. And so even in the mentoring that I do with young people, I always tell their parents, like, allow them to keep that childlike innocence and that childlike belief. Like, when you're a kid, you don't believe that anything that you say that you want to become in the world is impossible. You just believe that. You just say you want to do a thing, and it's just going to come to fruition in your mind. You don't believe that there's any barriers to success. I think life and life experiences teaches us that there are limits, that there are boundaries, that there is maybe not enough for everyone else. But when you're a kid, you just believe that the world is an oyster and everything is possible and the sky is not even the limit. And so for me, one of the things that I've had to do in my entrepreneurship journey, because it is tough to keep that level of belief, is just to constantly remind myself of that childlike innocence, of that childlike belief that anything is possible. And so, you know, the world we live in and social media and seeing other people's successes does help to be able to keep that. But I think it's something that you just have to really practice and really be intentional about for yourself and give that to other people as well. I think, you know, I, even as a business coach and people who works with people who have big ideas, I never tell anyone that their idea isn't possible. You know, I'm always like, okay, let's figure out how we're going to make this happen. And then through the process, we fine tune it to get it to a place that makes sense for them. But I'm never going to tell you that that sounds crazy and it's impossible, because, you know, I think for all of us, you know, especially people who are business owners or have big dreams, even if your dream is to become, even when I was in college, because I have a degree in healthcare management. Right. And so when I was in college, I didn't say most people who have that degree go into the public health sector in some sorts and do policy or something of the sorts. I was like, I'm going to be the CEO of a hospital. That was my dream. I never said, I'm like, I'm going to graduate and I'm going to be the CEO of a hospital. And at the time when I was in college, I worked for Johns Hopkins Health System, which is one of the largest health systems in the country, and it's big and it's grand and all that was going on there. I was like, I'm going to run this one day. And I did take business classes and all that stuff. I didn't know a CEO. I barely knew a person who owned a business. In my mind, I'm just like, I'm going to be the CEO. I'm not going to settle for being the manager here or the person there that pushes the papers. I'm going to be the CEO. Right. And that was always my mentality. So even when I started a business, I never believed that I couldn't be the CEO of this thing, because I'm like, I'm supposed to be the CEO of Johns Hopkins. You know, in my mind, and I say that too a lot of times, especially for women, because like she said, it's so easy for women to talk themselves out of their dreams, to talk themselves out of their goals, to talk themselves out of their big ideas, especially because a lot of times for most women, it's not just about them. You have families, you have children, you have other responsibilities that a lot of times you put before yourself. So it's hard for you to believe big for the thing that you want out of life, because you have all these other things to contend with. Whereas on the other side, men could have children, they could have families, they could have other responsibilities, but they understand that prioritizing themselves and getting themselves to the highest level of fulfillment, of success or whatever, contributes to everybody else doing well as well. And for some reason, as women, we don't connect those dots. We don't believe that if I go to the highest level of fulfillment, of joy, of peace, of success, then I can be a better mom, a better wife, a better friend, a better whoever to all the people that are connected to me. And so for me, it's always a constant reminder to keep believing big. Anytime I'm coming up with a new idea, whatever initial number I come up with, I'm like, no, let's double it. Because in my mind, I need to see it much bigger than the innate thing that comes to me, because that allows me to really go for it. And really stand and really get what I deserve, because most of us aren't trained in our minds to initially ask for the thing we deserve. We ask for the thing that we think we can get, or maybe a little more than that, but never all the way to the top, the big thing that we deserve. And so I always have a mindset of like believing bigger than the initial idea that I've always had.
Because women are always trying to make the other person comfortable. Right. And so, like she said, we won't ask for the big thing that we really want. We'll ask for what we think is going to make us comfortable and not make somebody else uncomfortable. And so, therefore, again, we do it ourselves down, and then we think we're doing something and we're like, okay, oh, I really want this, but I'm not going to ask. I'll just go in the middle. And then we ask for that, and they be like, okay. And they say it too quick. And you be like, damn it, I should have, right? How many times I should have asked for more, or I should have did that. And I think we just don't automatically go for the North Star, right? We just go right middle of the road because we don't want to talk ourselves out of the job, you know, so we don't want to do that. And again, we're so innate, and I think we do that too much in our lives holistically with our children, with our spouses. We don't do the thing that we want, right? We do the thing that we think is going to make us comfortable and not make somebody else uncomfortable. And so we're always trying to please. But at the end, I think it's bad for us, because then we become resentful. And then later on, when you have an empty nester, and you're like, I could have did this if I didn't have you, if I didn't, you support. So then now you living with a sense of resentment. And I'm saying at the end of the day, one of the things Jasmine always says, and to her point, she has said it. And because, of course, I do come from a different generation, and I was like, what? No, but she's true. Why can't we have it all? Why can't I be the mom, the wife, the CEO? Why can't I have it all? Because guess what? The husbands are the husbands, the dads, the CEOs. So why can't moms? The husbands can have it all. But for what reason is the moms can't? They can be a husband, they can be a dad, they can be a CEO, all at the same time. But for women, we like, well, just when the kids get here, then I'll do this. And then when they do this, and but he got, like, we always put ourselves on the back burner, but I think you can absolutely do it all, and you have to believe that you can. And then everybody else will fall in line, and you create your boundaries at home, the same with your family and your children and your spouse, the same way you create boundaries at work. And like, hey, this is my goal. This is what I'm trying to do. And so you guys do your part so mommy can do her part. Husband, you do your part so I can, you know what I mean? And we work this thing together. And if people aren't in line with that, you got to put you first at the end of the day, because that's how health issues and all these other things, I think far too many women, and we're not talking about that, but I do want to address that, is I have seen far too many women in their 50s are dying and below are dying. Health disease, heart disease, having strokes at 50. Who does that at 50? You know what I mean? The stresses of the world, of the workplace, of the family, we let all of these things consume us. And I think we have to take care of ourselves first. And that comes from whatever makes you happy, do that thing. And everybody has to fall in line.
Absolutely. So, Smart Start listeners, we have a couple of phenomenal additions to your toolbox, thanks to Tyra and Jasmine. Believe in yourself, believe in yourself, believe in yourself, believe in yourself. We cannot say it enough. And in the words of Jasmine Dyson, just like, oh my gosh, I forgot what you said. I'm sorry. You said something beyond believe in yourself.
I said believe bigger. So
believe bigger. Yes.
Believe bigger.
Yes. You know what you said? You know what you said, and I'm never going to forget this again. Do not talk yourself out of your dreams.
Yes.
Do not talk yourself out of your dreams. So that's the second tier to believe in yourself.
That was poetry. I was like,
it was, and I'm actually never going to forget it. I'm going to write that down. And be authentic to yourself. Believe in the authentic version of yourself. And when you see that happening and you see somebody else succeeding in doing that, lift each other up. Lift up your peers. We cannot do this alone. Tyra and Jasmine, thank you so much for being here today.
You're absolutely welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. Thank you so much. So, again, we want to thank Jasmine and Tyra for making time for us today. I could have talked to them longer than we did, but we had to cut it. But it was great. I really, really enjoyed that. And I hope we talk to them again maybe in the future. Maybe not this particular podcast, but
I want to have like a 4-hour lunch with them and continue this conversation because it was so amazing.
We're buying though, you know that, right?
Yeah, we're buying. Oh, we are buying. Yeah,
but
this was amazing.
Thank you, our audience. Thank you, Sara. Thank you, our lovely ladies.
Thank you, Eming.
So much. Well, we have to bring our. I guess my role as Ultimate Older is to bring you up. So here, Miguel, Sara, rise.
Thank you, Eming.
Rise.
Thank you, Eming. Eming has been a wonderful mentor to me and a wonderful partner to me.
Shh. We don't say the M word.
I just have to say, I think that, like, you know, over at Smart Meetings in our office, you know, like we have a really strong relationship with our women coworkers, and like it's a very like woman-centric company. Like we have a lot of really powerful women in this company.
We do.
And it is admirable and inspiring. And if we talk about lifting each other up and celebrating successes, you know, I think that we all do, and it's just inspiring.
Yeah, I think a lot of things that they said reminded me of like things that have happened to us, or like the better side of things. Like, I felt very hopeful listening, because I was like, you know, like there is a way to be a woman and not make someone else feel bad. You know, that is a thing to do. We can lift. It's not a race. against
Yes.
each other. We're
Yeah.
supposed to be a unit.
Yes.
And we should, like in any
I
industry,
agree.
we should have a community of like, you know
Yes.
what? There's a power above us that's always going to be above us, but how can we at least get to the level where we're, you know, near them? And
Yeah.
I think they really touched on that, and I really
I agree.
appreciated that.
I think like the biggest takeaway is that we lift each other up.
We do. So lift smart meetings, lift
Go on, Smart Start listeners.
and
Lift yourselves, lift your peers.
and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Smart Start Radio, a Smart Meetings production. Interested in being our next guest? Connect with us at editor@smartmeetings.com.